So hi everyone, good evening. Am I audible? Yeah. Okay. So this is my first public speaking. So please pardon me if I'm struggling a bit, but I just want to share a few thoughts here. Probably I've already covered, but like as a true economist, we never take a side, right? Like Sar said, we are always on as a fence sitters. So I'm going to take a cautiously optimistic approach. That is the terminology we say, right? So I don't want to call it as a Bane or Boon. Rather, I would take a cautiously optimistic approach. So we already know what are the challenges that, we have when it comes to the Indian, demographic dividend. So I'm going to touch upon, a few strategies that we could kind of, look into to overcome the challenges as well as, to tap the opportunities, right? So I'm going to kind of share a few, incidents that I came across. So because I'm closely associated with the government of Tamil Nadu and we are working on a few projects there. So we are working on this planning commission project, and we happen to visit, Perambalur district. Okay, so there we were interacting with the officials from the skill development department. Okay, so there was a, they were lamenting that there is a kind of labor force shortage, especially in the semi-skilled area. So they were saying that, for example, in ITI, so they are not getting enough students enrolled. But on the other hand, we have so many engineering students enrolled where they are unable to find a job, right? So that in the demand and supply in terms of scholars, the jobs, the demand and supply mismatch is there. And also like employability. So another scheme I will share actually. So I don't know how many of you came across the scheme by government of Tamil Nadu. It's called Non-Mudalvan. So basically the scheme is kind of like conceived with the idea to improve the employability of the engineering graduates in Tamil Nadu. Okay? So during the initial round of the meeting, I happened to attend that. So where the bureaucrats as well as the people from corporates were also there. So when the government people, when the bureaucrats were asking why not enough jobs are being created in the economy to kind of to cater to to address this problem, they were saying that it is not about the unavailability of jobs, but rather it is about the demand, the skill demand supply mismatch. So that is the point they were talking about, right? So especially if you think of AI or ML, that area, we have so many openings, but then does our education, be it in terms of school education or college education, does it actually, cater to that demand? Unfortunately, no. I mean, today also I had a discussion. Sorry if I'm sharing too many anecdotes here. But then today I had a discussion with one of the, TNAG officials. I was talking about the way our school education has become. So how many of you remember what dy dx is? If you think of calculus, we have something called slope, right? So we call it dy dx. So what is the actual interpretation of that? Can anyone say what it is? We all simply say slope or, the point of tangency. So that, a technical definition we give, but then do we really know what the dy dx stands for? What it is actually, dy dx stands for. It is slope. You say slope, or you say that, you can write a mathematical formula if it is, exactly, sir, right? But still, I mean, is it the actual interpretation of dy dx? No, right? So see how our education system has become. And I feel like, we focus too much on, there's something called STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM. So, why not, focus on, let's say, arts and social sciences? Because, I'm from agriculture background, I mean, my UG, because I had my math, biology. But the moment I switched to economics, there was criticism from my family and my friends, why are you going into arts? But there is, so much opportunity in that area. So the quality, the education quality is something that we have to focus on. That is one aspect. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, there is no such thing called one size fits all. So when the government kind of devises, policies and schemes, so they have to keep in mind, the diversity of the country. So that is something which they have to focus on. Then also when we talk about upskilling, so it has to be something that is gradual and continuous in nature. I mean, the learning never stops, right? So if you become part of an organization, you have to keep learning. So that is something that has to be instilled. And I mean, the current Gen Z, they are looking for instant gratification. So how do you imbibe that, like the culture of continuous learning in them? So these are some of the things that I feel like we have to focus on if we really want to tap that, the opportunity of reaping that demographic dividend. Okay. So then another thing I wanted to talk about is, the government can't do everything. I mean, we do have a much strain on the financial resources. So, I feel like it is an effort from the society as a whole rather than just kind of expecting that the government should do everything. Okay. So, I think the society has to be conscious and aware of as to what we should do. And there should be like a lot of discussion happening. Unfortunately, I feel like this topic, this demographic dividend, how to reap it, I feel like it has kind of become overlooked. So that's something, we have to do. And also, there is a last point I wanted to talk about, is focusing on innovation. Right? So of course, there are so many startups that have come up, but then, the current Gen Z, they don't want to be no longer, employees, rather, they want to have their own startups and things like that. So the innovation is something that they have to look into, in the sense the government has to. I mean, there are N number of schemes. It's not that, we have a lot of schemes, but that's something which the government has to address. Okay? So of course there are N number of strategies that we can think of when it comes to, the reaping the demographic dividends. But predominantly I feel we have to focus on, the addressing the gaps that we have right now in the education sector. So I feel like that's something which we have to think about. And also Sar spoke about the gender equality, or the more labor for participation from female side, right? Because, of course there are arguments that the care work has to be recognized, but I don't know whether that is really part of, the true economy. So there should be equal participation from women as well. That should be something that we have to encourage. Okay? So I think that's all from my side. I just wanted to share. I think we can just move on to now Q&A now. Thank you.
Yeah. We have some questions as always. Any questions from the floor? No. Okay. Now, there is one for Dr. Suresh Babu. Given the increasing life expectancy in India, what economic policies should be prioritized to balance the needs of an aging population with the aspirations of a younger workforce? Are we really to handle the growing old population?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very difficult question to answer. There is no straightforward answer to that. But one of the things that came up in McKinsey's report maybe 4 weeks back was there is an increasing trend among population which is older in the sense that 62 plus returning to the workforce in the post-COVID times. So, I think a lot of this, old age economic security can be taken care of if we provide some kind of a flexibility in terms of, jobs, A. B, a combination of social security benefits when we talk about social security, basically health, yeah, and see some kind of technology improvements which can assist this aged. A very simple kind of an anecdote. If you are really going to a railway station to catch a train, and if we want to cross over to the other side, well, there could be a lift and there could be also an escalator. But approaching the lift and escalator itself becomes a task at times. Yeah, not only for the aged, even for the young. So that is where I think we need to have domestic absorption of technology. India produces marvelous technologies. There's no doubt about that. But the domestic absorption of technologies could be increased. And this domestic absorption of technologies could actually be a kind of a game changer as far as the youth as well as the aged is concerned.
Thank you. Now, on to Mr. Ramasundaram. Drawing from your experience in government and corporate leadership, how should India prepare for the economic challenges posed by an aging population, particularly in terms of pension schemes and social security, without undermining the potential benefits of its current youth demographic?
Thank you. I would not worry too much about the old like me. I would worry about the poor. According to government's own data, 11% of India's population is below the poverty line, what is called multidimensional poverty, which is about $2.9 per day per person. The government claims it has come down from about 22% to 11% in the last 10 years. So 11% of 140 crore is about 15.5 crores. By itself, it will be the fifth largest country if you rank it after India, China, and Indonesia and the US. The distribution of this 15.5 crores is the issue. 83% of this 15.5 crores is in UP, Bihar and Jharkhand. So that is, I think, a more serious issue for the government to handle than, worrying about older people who have lived a full life. But there are people, young people, who are not able to afford 3 meals a day or even 2 meals a day in those states. So that is where the focus should be. And Dr. Suresh Babu made a very good point on nutrition. Investing in children. I remember when we were in the government, when Mr. MGR's Sattunavu Thittam was launched, everybody said it is a populist scheme. But there is a World Bank paper which says because of that scheme, enrollment of girls increased in schools, then it delayed their marriageable age. And they wanted to work. If you study until 12, then you want to go to college, then you want to work. So that delayed the age at marriage. And that is one of the reasons for the sharp fertility decline in Tamil Nadu. So I think we need to, look at investing in health and nutrition, even in those poor states, which can be done by government.
One more question alongside. Is India's joint family system helping in the cause as a continuation of the previous?
I don't know. In the urban areas, I don't think there is any joint family. In, Besant Nagar, very close to where I live, is full of what they call parent orphans. Because the children are in the US, visit them once a year.
May come.
So that is not, nuclear families will be the way forward. The issue is, once again, if you see the income disparities, in the southern states, we are probably going to reach East European levels by about 2030. Close to $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. Whereas the other end, Bihar and UP, are closer to sub-Saharan Africa, Sierra Leone, Burkina Faso. So that is the problem. The disparity between states in India is the issue. That is what I want to keep repeating. So, which is not good for the country in the long run.
One more question to you, sir. You can make a choice about whether you want to respond. How should India's policymaker approach the delayed national census, and what insights can it provide to better harness the demographic dividend?
No, the census should be taken. There is no, doubts about it. Why government has not done it, we don't know. It has not been, more than 100 years we have had censuses. Now it's all estimates. So census should be taken. On how to benefit from demographic dividend, it again, varies from state to state. You must have seen in the newspapers that over 40% of female factory workers are in Tamil Nadu, whose overall share in population is only 7%. So why is it so? That is the key to development.
Thank you, sir. Now, one for Professor Magalingam. You can try this question, sir. In what ways can social safety nets such as pension schemes be restructured to address the economic burden of an aging population without compromising on the economic potential of the younger generation? That is a similar question has been rephrased, I think, by another way. Would you like to take it?
Sure, sir. So, I think we have the answer already because, for the people who are working in the organized sector, there is already, enough, social safety net, what you call it. But then again, we have to think about the people who are working in the unorganized sector. Of course, the government has come up with, few schemes now. That Atal pension, stuff like that. But then again, as of now, we don't have a comprehensive, kind of social security scheme that would cater to the large section of the population. Whatever the existing schemes are there now, it is kind of catering to only the people who are working in the organized sector. So I think that's something which we have to work on. But again, the caveat is that, it will cause a huge strain on the public finance because we're already running a huge fiscal deficit. But I don't know how much, that bandwidth we have, when it comes to, kind of coming up with such universal, social security scheme that would address the, the huge population. So, yeah.
Thank you. One for you, Doctor. Please.
I think this question has come up repeatedly, taking care of the old versus the youth. I would say invest in the future, not in the past.
Now, Dr. Suresh Babu, what are the potential long-term economic implications if the nation fails to effectively capitalize on its demographic dividend?
Just one word, disaster. Because, regional imbalances, we already heard about that, and that will widen. One. There is also a phenomenon that India is witnessing, underlying, that is this widespread economic inequality that is coming up. Yeah? I don't want to name, we see, weddings where, 5,000 crores are spent, and we also see multidimensional poverty, as Sir was talking. So there is an underlying economic inequality that is actually, and if that spreads, then all our democratic structures, institutions, governance structures, everything will be under threat. And I think that is one big kind of a thing. I really want to add one more point here. That is about data. Yeah, and that is very important when we talk about any kind of policy making, because now we talk about evidence-based policy making and things of that sort. If we don't have census now, we are supposed to have it in 2021. Of course, COVID and all this kind of thing. Now we are in 2024. We have kind of digital equipments which can actually be very useful. It's high time that we had census. One. Two, we also need to really improve our statistical system. For example, migrants data is something which really was lacking when we were talking about the COVID return migration and things of that sort. We don't have an authentic data or in terms of migration. Consumption survey just came out to understand poverty. But again, that's a very partial kind of a picture that it is showing. So as a nation, we also need to improve our statistical system, which was once upon a time excellent or one of the best in the world. And that is where I think our policymakers should also pay some attention to.
You would like?
Yeah,
Please.
so I just add like one more point here. I mean, like Sir rightly pointed, it's about the availability of data at the right time as well as the quality of the data. So the two key things I think right now we are missing. So from that point, I want to cite one simple example. I don't know how many of you heard this term called something called like upward mobility. Like how, like the society as, like from one generation when they move to the next generation, how they reach the next strata in terms of their, like per capita income or whatever you call it, right? So there is one study by Professor Raj Shetty from Harvard University where he was able to kind of use the granular data that is available at the zip code level. And then he was able to come up with, like which zip code or what you call it is a pin code is associated with, like higher upward economic mobility and why that is happening. Okay. So such kind of, like research work, especially in countries like India where we have so much diversity is needed. But unfortunately for the want of data as well as the availability of quality data, we are unable to, like kind of carry out such studies, which again would help us in devising appropriate schemes.
I would like to add one point. I think, we have enough data for policy making. Let's not give an excuse to the policymakers. We don't have enough data, that's why we're not able to make good policies. I think we know, the overall structure, which Dr. Suresh Babu mentioned, the widening inequality among people, among states, it's very well known. If we don't know the decimal point, it doesn't, matter for policy making. So let's not, highlight too much about the lack of data. Then that will be used as an excuse, we don't have data, otherwise you would have made a wonderful policy.
Thank you, sir. And someone here has read Professor Suresh Babu's mind, I would say. That is how the question is. How can regional disparities within the country affect the overall demographic dividend? What strategies can be implemented to ensure inclusive growth across different states? Disciplined state, how come disciplined, economically disciplined, I see, say, or sociologically disciplined state lose out in the context?
I think with your permission,
All three of you.
I will pass this question to an experienced policymaker.
Yes, that is where it should begin.
No, I think it's the quality of governance in the states which will eventually matter, and it's beyond the people in this hall, either on the dais or in the audience. We only have to pray that good sense prevails in those states, and those governments start focusing on real investments on education, children and the youth, and not look at religious places or other divisive factors. Once development takes place, you don't look at your neighbor from the religious angle or something. You want to see how much he is earning, what kind of car he is driving, like a Western society. So that is what we should aspire for, nor where he is going to pray or where he is going to take a procession. So that is where the difference between the developed and the not so developed states in India. So eventually we are a democracy. Ultimately, the elected leaders will have to take responsibility.
Anybody? Anyone? Please.
Yeah, just to add to that point, in terms of governance, I think it is important to have very robust institutions, and institutions which actually can survive for a long period of time. And public institutions are very, very important at that. And when we look at the history of economic growth of developed countries, we find that such public institutions are very robust and they survive for long periods. The durability of institutions is something that I think we need to really focus if we really want to make some progress.
Now the next question is, considering the global examples like in US and Japan, how can India avoid potential pitfalls of an aging population while maximizing the benefits of its current youthful demography? this comparison continues to come up again and again in our questions. You would like to take it, sir?
So again, given what a little knowledge I have, looking at the social security schemes in US, we need to have a robust social security scheme covering the unorganized sector too. But we do not have a definite answer for this, given that it will cause a huge strain on the public finance in India, because US is already facing that. They are saying that eventually at the current rate they are paying out the social security to the beneficiaries. They are saying that they are going to run out of the funds in another few years actually. So if countries like US and Japan are struggling, but I'm not sure what the government could do. Rather it could be something that government should do everything. Perhaps that may not work. It could be something that is contributory in nature. One simple example is that the new pension scheme that NPS the government has come up with. So along the same lines, perhaps for the unorganized sector too. I mean, there is scheme where if you chip in something for the Atal Pension Yojana or something, right? So you have to put something. The government will also contribute something. Maybe that's something which can be expanded, for time being. And again, a lot more study has to be done in this aspect.
Please.
Just to add to that, at the moment for central government employees, the monthly outgo on pensions, people like me and Mr. Sivasailam, is higher than salaries to working people, which has been the trend for the last 2 or 3 years. It will change only when the people who were recruited after 2004 under the contributory pension scheme or the new pension scheme, they start retiring, then the burden on pension will come down. So my point is the same. I think if somebody has survived for 60 years, he or she will somehow survive further. Invest in the future, in the children and the youth. That is the most important point for the future of this country. Our generation is whatever it is. It's it is not the future. So invest in the future. Dr. Suresh Babu has put those data very much in context of nutrition and healthcare. That is where we should focus on.
So, in the last question, what role do you see for the private sector in shaping the demographic dividend, especially in sectors like manufacturing and services? Would you like to take?
There are, articles appearing now and then saying that India can switch over from agriculture to services directly, mainly because of 3 or 4 IT companies which, have employed lakhs of youngsters. But except small island economies, Singapore and Taiwan, there is no example of any country jumping from agriculture to services directly. You have to go through manufacturing. When I was a student in University of Southern California, the professor, Richard Easterlin, he is an economic historian, he used to call out this fallacy. People in India think that service economy can feed on itself. The example he gave was airline employees and hotel employees. So airline people stay in hotels and hotel people use airlines. But that is not enough. The numbers are not enough. The manufacturing people have to use both hotels and airlines. Then only those service industries can prosper, not on each other's travel and room nights. So manufacturing is where private industry should, I think, create jobs. And, recently Ms. Geeta Gopinath, Deputy MD of IMF, has said India has to generate about 140 million jobs in the next decade. So there, I think the private sector has a major role to play.
Just to add to that, one of the things that we have to also reckon with is this whole new animal or creature, what we call as AI. Because that is going to really mess up a lot of these numbers that we have shown, and how the industry is going to adopt that and how we are going to utilize that will have a serious impact perhaps. Thank you.
just want to add like one point. Again, this is something very serious actually. I mean, from statistics point of view, there's something called gross capital formation, right? So I feel like it has become stagnant, like industries are now focusing more on cost cutting. They don't go into expansion because they are not investing much in the capex part. That's something calls for serious introspection among the, like private sector. They are focusing on, like kind of appeasing the stakeholders and, by indulging in cost cutting measures, they don't really invest in, like R&D or, if you look at the R&D expenditure classification of, different companies, I don't know. That's something which they have to focus on. GCF has to be increased. It has remained stagnant. So that's something which I wanted to add.
We come to an end of a very informative session. Thank you, gentlemen, on the day for making it informative and educative. And thank you, my audience also. Particularly, I thank the young students who are here, the next generation.